All right. Hello, hello. And welcome to the GottaDo podcast. Today we have Jimmie Menezes.
Menezes, yes.
Menezes. Alrighty. And you do stand-up comedy. I think you've done music before too.
Yeah, I used to play in some bands, but mostly I'm a comic these days.
Alrighty. And you got a show coming up?
I have shows all the time.
You have shows all the time. That's what's up. And you mostly do them in like Tracy and stuff, right?
No, I do them all over. There's really not too many places where I don't do shows. Pretty much wherever will have me.
Nice. Um, so today we were joined by someone that has been doing stuff with GottaDo Productions for a couple months now, and this episode would not be possible without some of the following mentions: Baxter, Moon Trent, and especially Melinda. Thank you all for being on the show and also supporting the show and whatnot. The show would not be possible without you guys. So, without further ado, let us continue with our third episode, which we are glad to have here on Twitch. And I'm trying to fill in as he's typing away, so I'm not interrupting his typing.
Oh no, you're not bugging me at all. I'm just posting that video I took outside of the inchworm.
There's been quite a few of those little guys on the stairs
Well,
all day.
it's butterfly season, so they're all over the place.
Dope. We're ready to go see some death flies or something around here. You get a special species.
Have you ever been out to the bird sanctuary out at the end of Shoemake Road?
Is this out by Cason Road, River Road?
It's where Shoemake Road dead ends, like even way out past Gates.
Oh, okay. I've been on that side, but on the other side of it on Durham Ferry.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you get to it. The other side is Bird Road, and there's like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. On the other side of the river. But yeah, that's the bird sanctuary is cool out there.
This place is really dope. I drove down Center Road that one day coming home from Tracy, and everyone was just out there just smoking. It was great. Drinking, fishing.
Dumping bodies in the river.
I cannot disclose that information.
Well, I mean, just,
I don't want anybody getting arrested. Okay.
just saying it looks like that kind of place
Right,
out there.
it definitely is super quiet and whatnot. You never know what goes down over there. I saw a few people spraying their fields, looking at people like them damn teenagers.
Oh, I'm sure that it totally looks like a make-out point kind of a thing too.
This roads like totally look like unmaintained.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like they must be.
Well,
private
I
roads.
think they're kind of borderline levees, like not even actually roads. It's like driving on a canal bank, you know?
Like, yeah, sure, you can drive on here.
When I was younger, we used to go to this place in Patterson called the Quarter Mile, which was literally you just go to where the aqueduct starts at Zacharias Road and drive down the canal bank basically on the aqueduct until it dead end, which was a quarter mile away, and just people would party out there.
Did it end in town?
It's like on the edge of town, like the north end of town, off of
Yeah.
Highway 33.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. I have a cousin that's autistic. We take him out there with the little razor. So my uncle lives out there, so that's pretty cool. That place is pretty. Driving up and down there is pretty fun.
Yeah, and people dirt bike out there and stuff too.
So where'd you grow up?
I grew up around here.
In Modesto?
Yeah, I went to Sylvan Elementary,
Really?
and then Somerset Junior High,
Cool.
and then I graduated from Beyer High.
Nice. And what led you into your career? Like, what made you think, you know what? I want to make people laugh.
It's kind of a long story, I guess, but even when I was a little kid, I always was good at making people laugh in my family and stuff. And then as I got older, I became the dude that would tell the teachers stuff, and people would laugh, and I would get in trouble. And that turned into me befriending my teachers as I got older, doing the same kind of things, because my parents never had a filter with the stuff that I watched or absorbed. Like when I was a little kid, one of my coming home from school and watching movies was that movie Bachelor Party with Tom Hanks. Which it's chicks having sex with donkeys and doing coke and sex and drugs and booze and hookers and fire trucks and all that kind of stuff. So the stuff that I thought was funny was always I guess, on the fucked up side of things. So, um, yeah, it kind of went from there, and I played music for years, and then I ended up doing stand up kind of by accident, I guess. Um, I did a talent show in high school, and I literally got up in a little theater and told a bunch of Bill Hicks and Brian Regan jokes, and a couple Dennis Wolfberg jokes, and that was really it. And I came in second place to a band called Piss Off. They won the contest.
Hey, second place. I mean,
And
especially if you're competing against music.
right, and it was like 20 something years until I did a second set, and I was at the casino with my mom. And there used to be this show called Street Smarts, and what it was is they would interview people on the streets, and they'd be like, ask them like, like, do you think we should vote no for women's suffrage? And then they'd be like, yeah, like that kind of stuff. So like, and then they'd kind of make fun of people for being stupid and such, or not being indoctrinated into like U.S. history or whatever phrase you want to use. It's more polite. um, but the host, his name was Frank Nicotero, or is, I mean, he's not dead. So, and so my mom saw him in the casino, and she's like, "Oh, are you doing the show? Because I want to be on the show. I love that show." And he was like, "Actually, I'm a stand-up comedian. Here's a couple tickets to my show." And my mom was all like, "Oh, my son always wanted to be a comedian. He did it in a talent show in high school," and talked him up. And he was just like, "Is he funny?" And my mom was like, "Yeah, he's funny." And he like grabbed me, and he was like, "Come with me. You're doing stand-up," and like took me into the green room and like told me that the host was, the dude in the corner by the PA. When he waved his phone like this, that meant my time was done, and to just go up there and say the funny things I always say at parties. And
Cool. Now, was that the first time your mom has ever wingman for you?
my mom has actually gotten me laid ween manning for me, so I don't know if that's
awesome.
necessarily
That's so awesome.
like
Mom's being the real homie out there.
right. Well, like when I was like younger and stuff, I would go through the store and she'd be like, "Oh, blah 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 blah, my son, blah blah blah. Oh, here he comes," and then she'd leave, and like I'd be like stuck talking to this chick in the aisle or whatever, and I got numbers and stuff from that.
Mad respect.
Like
That's hella dope. So that was your first ever like show that you would consider not being school related, or
Right. And what happened was it was Frank Nicotero, one of the dudes that was on Last Comic Standing, and a set of brothers that do stand-up comedy called the Sklar Brothers. And after I was done, I remember I just went up there and just started talking and saying stuff and making fun of things, and like like, "If this is Milwaukee's best, I'd hate to taste Milwaukee's worst," like those kind of like literally the stupid shit I said at parties and stuff. And afterwards I got down, and they were like, "That's not the first time you ever did comedy." And I was like, "Yeah, actually it is." And they gave one. Jason gave me his number that day and said, "If you have ever any questions, then stick with this. Like, call me."
wow.
And Frank pretty much said the same thing. And then the host of the show came up to me afterwards and tried to sell me a $700 workshop.
Not today.
And this was after I fell for wrestling school scams, so I wasn't gonna fall for the stand-up comedy scam too.
Right.
And so I declined his offer, but then he offered me a chance to come back the next week, and I did. And I went with my friend Nick and his sister Marcella, and she got up there and crushed it. And then I followed her, and I was terrible. And then I didn't do it again for like 6 or 7 years, maybe.
Wow.
And
It's quite the hiatus.
yeah, I just didn't really I was like, "Oh, that sucks that that's how you break into is you pay some greasy guy a whole bunch of money and he makes you drive him around and do stuff for free until he starts paying you 10 years later," kind of thing. Like I was, like I said, I already fell for the wrestling school scam. I wasn't into it for that. And so I just declined. And I was like, it was nice, I guess, to say I tried it, that kind of a deal. And then I went to an open mic in Modesto at this place called the Guru Lounge, and literally everybody was dog shit. Like, I knew as I was witnessing the show that it was like the worst beginner foot in the door, absolute bottom level, some of the worst comedy in the country kind of stand up. Like, I could tell as I was experiencing it. No knock on any of the people I saw there that are no longer doing comedy in our area. Thank fucking God. But
Wink, wink.
no, I'm not naming any names, but I mean it's just one of those things, dude. This is like 9 years ago.
Right.
And so, like, most of those comics are gone, or they come back up, resurface like a couple of times a year, and are terrible and go away because they don't practice or write. Like, they just get up there and spew the same monologue they've been saying. And there's one guy that was really good, and I just thought to myself, if I could be as good as Roberto, like, I would be happy. So I was like, I'll do this, and I can get that good. I'll be cool. And so I talked to some people and like was like, I'll come back next week and actually perform. So I came back the next week and performed, and it went really well. And then afterwards, everybody's like, "Oh, you're new. Can you drive me to this open mic or this show or this, that, or the other?" And after the first week, when I went back to the Guru the next Tuesday, I had gone and done 10 open mics and shows.
Wow.
Just
kept it busy.
Within that first week, I had gone to San Francisco, Sacramento, San Luis Obispo, Fresno. I went to Reno. I went to Tahoe. like, I came home from work one day, and my girlfriend that I had broken up with but was still living with because we were trying to like make life easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we know how those work.
And so like we technically weren't together, but she was still living in the house that we had moved into together. And I came home from work one day. She moved, took the dogs, all my shit. Well, not all my shit, but all the shit like that we had bought together or collectively or anything.
Right.
I got to keep my clothes, my towels, my bed, and my videos, and my guitars.
Hell yeah.
I think she took the drum kit though, but I think most of it was hers. So I don't really remember. But yeah, dude, I was sitting on the couch in the house, all fucking bummed out, and that was the night my friend was like, "Oh, I'm going to this open mic at this Guru place. You want to go?" So I had no reason to go home after work for that fucking 6 months. So I just went out and did stand up every night.
That's awesome. Definitely gave you that exposure and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's necessarily exposure so much as just I don't want to say like it rescued me or anything stupid like that, but it definitely gave me something to focus on other than going home to an empty house.
Hey, you got a very good point there.
Right.
That's so in this experience that you've been going out for 6 months, like doing it almost every night, at least going out to these open mics. I mean, you must have met many people. Did you run into anybody that actually got pretty big?
Like as far as like comics that I've met that aren't big that are getting big, yeah, I know some, and I've met a few, and I've worked with a few. As far as comics that are already big, like that started happening within 3 months of doing stand up, and that's just because I was kind of new and eager and had a car, and so like yeah, I ended up driving around a lot of like the bigger name comics that were like brought here, like already. Like, like if you're like a fan of stand-up, you might know who they are. If you're not, then you might be like, never heard of those people, but whatever.
Right.
Like, I had a chance to like pick people who've been doing it 20 years brains on long road trips and that kind of stuff. And apparently I knew how to ask the right questions because they were completely happy to answer the questions I was asking.
It's an important skill to.
And it is in a frank manner. Like, even some of the things I didn't want to hear then, like I can see that when they were telling me then, it came from like a place of like, oh, this is some real shit, dude. Like, like you're going to reach that point where you have a half hour and then you're just going to do that half hour every night for 10 years. Like they weren't kidding.
Yeah. So what are some of the oldest jokes that stuck around in your set?
I can honestly say probably like my first couple of years worth of jokes that I tell, there might only be maybe one, and it's like not even like a whole joke. It's like now a sentence and another joke kind of a thing. But I kind of always try to keep my act. I'm always writing, always riffing, always plugging stuff in and updating things. So it's, I guess, flexible in that sense, to where I'm not always, you come and see me, you're not going to see the same. You might hear some of the same points and maybe even some of the same punchlines, but you're not going to hear the same shit, you know?
Yeah, like even when you come to our open mics, you do I can definitely tell the different wordings you've used, the jokes. I mean, the jokes are essentially the same template, but the wording's always a little
Right.
different.
Well, I mean, that's an open mic too, and that's one of the things that you go there is you try to get that verbiage down so that when you go and say it in the quote unquote real trenches, it comes out more conversational so that you don't seem scared up there, which is one of the big bravados of stand-up comedy is, as long as you don't look scared, you're cool.
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, it's essentially like a conversation with the entire audience.
Uh, One of the tips that I got when I first started actually was to not think of it as an audience and think of them as one person. And so, like, when you address an audience, address them like you're talking to one person. Um, if one person starts talking to you, like, you don't, try to necessarily turn the audience against that one person. You talk to that one person like it's the whole audience talking to you. like,
That makes sense. Yeah.
And I just found that once I learned that kind of stuff got a lot easier. Like, as far as just, you didn't have to think of 100 people in their underwear or even one person in their underwear. You're just like, oh, I'm talking to the person at the bank or talking to you or,
Like what are some of the most ridiculous piece of advice like that I've ever heard? I mean, I've always found the whole just think of everyone in their underwear. Like, that's so stupid. Who really thinks like that?
Honestly, that's like one of those things. Like, I think somebody probably did tell me that before I did the talent school show in high school. But honestly, like, luckily the first couple of times I ever went on stage, they had like big bright lights like out at the Black Oak Casino, so I couldn't even see the audience. I could just hear them. And this might sound trite, and even though I got ripped off and spent 6 months of my life fucking doing nothing but getting hurt, wrestling school did teach me a couple of things that I do apply to stand up, which is shut your mouth and listen. And there's different reactions, and you can like build off of that. And like, if you like, even if you can't see him, you can listen and be like, oh, that was the good nervous laugh. Now here comes the good gut belly laugh, and now here comes the big laugh. It's gonna make them all clap. And you kind of took them for a little, and finished it off with a superplex, so to speak. Like, for like wrestling jargon or whatever. But like, that stuff applies.
It's when you say that suplex. We were talking about that earlier, kind of.
What about like wrestling comparing to performing or something?
No, more like making a game out of wrestling moves. There'll be more on that in the future. Don't want to spoil anything yet for anybody.
But yeah, just pretty much. It's you could literally not see and go up there, so I don't understand why people do that whole like talking to the audience, like like the one person with some pretty good advice. Not giving a fuck was some pretty good advice I got, which is like, take the stick out of your ass. Don't take yourself so seriously. This is still just jokes.
Have no expectations.
You can have some expectations still. You can still set goals. You can still try and achieve things and still progress forward and leapfrog other comics that you're outworking and outperforming. But the idea is to just realize that it's like like, I'm sure there's been points in your life, whatever jobs you had, you're just like, oh, all I'm doing is making food for these people. I can relax a little bit. It's just food, or, whatever. Like, all you're doing is getting paid to go places and tell jokes. You can kind of not take yourself so seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, especially in the entertainment industry, I think people take themselves way too seriously. They hold themselves too high in themselves, and I do what I do, And I'm not trying to rub it in anybody's face, really. And I
Well,
like what I'm doing.
right.
And there's a modest way of showing yourself. But there's a point where it's like your personality is like, oh, I'm popular. That's what I do. It could be a little it could be a little troublesome sometimes.
I'm not necessarily troublesome so much as off-putting would be the word I would use. But I know what you're saying. Like, I know people that, like, all they do is talk about how successful they are, how good everything is, and it's always immediately followed by a put down on somebody else to give themselves that extra step or whatever. And it's
punch
like,
down.
yeah, it's like, do you, boo boo, whatever. I don't really care.
Right.
Like, like.
You should be supporting other people.
I've always.
Sure, everyone's a piece of competition, but not always.
Well, the thing is too, and this is one of the things that I've kind of received, I guess, flack for, is I personally believe that if you want to try to do stand-up comedy, or you feel like getting your foot into the door of stand-up, like, try it. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that this might sound trite, the whole idea of like it's free therapy or it's cheap therapy, or it's 10th step of fucking AA and you're doing your inventory or whatever it is. But I think that there's an idea of like, if you're going to write a successful stand-up comedy act, the first thing you need to do is get to know yourself pretty good. And then after you get to know yourself pretty good, you have to learn how to express yourself in your own unique way. And then that helps you feel like you have a voice and like a reason and a point, and like like, they can never take that away from me kind of feelings, and like, it's empowering, and it helps you get self-esteem back. It helps you get some of that stuff back.
It's like character building.
Right, and in that regard, I think everybody should be a stand-up comic and write an act and build their character. And I don't see why it should be an elitist thing, or a, you're old, don't do it thing, or a,
I agree. I mean, with anything in the entertainment industry, I think it's ridiculous to have this elitist sense of hierarchy, or what phrase you want to use.
There's gatekeepers in the Magic the Gathering scene, so I mean, there's gatekeepers everywhere you're gonna go.
Right.
I mean, like, literally, I just came from watching Star Wars, and there's like gatekeeper cosplay guys like putting the other cosplay people in their place. Like,
right.
It's just like,
it's one thing when
it's like you're playing dress up, bro. Relax.
Yeah. And it's one thing when you have like private property and someone's not allowed there or whatever the reason is, but when it comes to like simply, oh, we want this guy to play there because his following is not as big as this guy's, even though they're pretty comparable, doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, most places are pretty open to the public when it comes to being a venue.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, like, I know what you're saying. Like, the idea is like, like, if this place will have a rap act, why not have a metal act or something like that? If like they're drawing comparable money in the door or something, and then that's when you get on that weird tiptoey thing where it's like, you start to see signs on club doors that say like no baggy pants and no white t-shirts or no hats or sports attire.
Or my favorite, no flannels.
Yeah. Like, I think that's more to keep the stud lesbians out. But,
oh my.
Like, I've heard bar owners grumble that is a drama demographic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I guess every bar owner's got some story about some gnarly domestic abuse fight that occurred outside. And, since they're both girls, they're both gonna punch the shit out of each other. So
you might find some hair left over.
I don't know. Like, that's kind of a weird magic reference, but
yeah.
I mean, I see many a fight, but.
So when's the next show that you're performing at, and when's the next show that you're hosting?
Well, today is Sunday the 14th, and my next show is Tuesday the 16th at Tommy T's in Pleasanton.
Cool.
I'm hosting a show called Hecklemania, and what it is the audience is just encouraged to heckle the comics and book comics that might not know what to expect, but yeah, and I invite all my friends that go to my other shows that I have had to politely tell not to come to my other shows because they get drunk and heckle. So I put them all in one room and get the motorcycle club out and.
Oh my! That sounds like fun.
Yeah, get the other comics to heckle while the show's going on, and then at the end of the night, all the audience gets to pick the best heckler. And actually, at this show, I guess I should pump this up more because it's kind of neat. But it's the first ever ladder match roast battle.
Ladder match roast battle.
Right. Well, because there's this idea that all stand-up comics think they're wrestlers, and I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I do think that there's a sense of pageantry that is associated with wrestling that comics like to project upon what they're doing. Maybe
That is pretty funny.
maybe a certain sense of delusionment attached to a certain sense of pomposity, but anyways, a lot of comics relate to that kind of stuff. So instead of just regular old roast battle, I'm gonna have a ladder on the stage, and 5 steps on a ladder. And if your joke lands, you get to climb a step. And if your joke doesn't land, you get to take a step down. And there you go.
All right. Sounds very simple.
Whoever climbs the ladder first wins, and it's gonna be a bag of weed at the top. I think. I really don't know what the prize should be at the top, but I feel like there should be like something hanging from the ceiling for them to like go for.
Gift card for Taco Bell.
And one of the comics in the roast battle, I'm actually afraid he's gonna try and like jump off the ladder and take a gnarly bump. He just strikes me as that kind of dude. So.
And he said, have him one sign a waiver.
Oh, I if it happens, I don't know anything about it. All I can do is speculate at this point. But he just seems like that kind of dude.
It happens. So, what are some really raunchy jokes you got?
When I first started, I used to tell a lot more ribald material, I guess. But I mean, I was purposely trying to see where the line was drawn. As far as just taste, I guess, versus vulgarity versus actually funny versus like, this just has like women hating me versus like, the douchebag dudes like, yeah, bro, like that. Like I really try to find where those lines were drawn. And I used to have this bit about I don't even necessarily remember the entire routine, but basically it was about going home with a girl that I met at the club, going down on her, and then realizing that she was on her period when I looked in the mirror and saw that I was all covered in period blood and glitter. Basically. And people would come up to me after the shows and be like, you're the period blood and glitter guy. That's really all I remember from that bit. And I was like, I don't really want to be remembered as the period blood and glitter guy.
Definitely unique.
It seemed like it was only dudes with cell phone holsters coming up to me saying that kind of stuff, so I didn't think it was necessarily a good thing. So I kind of didn't do that. Another joke about going home with a cat lady from a bar one night.
I guess that one's self-explanatory.
Something about. I mean, it's kind of a true story. So I mean, the details are not necessarily changed, but like standing in a pub cat shit box while you got her bent over the bed, things like that.
Dope. That just I don't like. How much better can that get?
I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like it got to the point where it's like telling that story just like made me feel bad for myself after a while. If that made sense. But I guess that's part of building character through your stand-up act.
Would you say that part of making an act for yourself and for the crowd is kind of you got to be kind of relatable to the audience?
Oh, absolutely. Like, and that's part of what I was talking about, like finding out where those lines are drawn so that you can not offend people, so they'll still go with you when you go places. Right. Like, I've been doing this bit lately that I'm still working on about like just talking about Michael Jackson fucking little kids, basically. And, like, trying to figure out all the little nuances about that. And, like, I can tell that people were, like, not on board at first because they're like, like, we love Michael Jackson. How dare you say you fuck those kids? And by the end of it, they're like, like applauding the idea of like a man having sex with children, essentially.
Pretty much. I could agree to that.
And I'm like, wow, I took you someplace pretty fucking dark and gross, and you guys are like, like, you're right, he did fuck Macaulay Culkin to get famous.
Yeah.
Like.
All right.
You know what I mean? Like people are like, oh.
I mean, what do you actually think about that? Because what do you think about people who deny?
I literally
claims?
made a piece of art in probably like 1991 or 92 called in one of my high school art classes. I melted army soldiers, like the little green army soldiers, onto a canvas and painted a stencil Michael Jackson, and the piece was called "Michael Jackson is a pedophile and is burning in hell, deserves a burn in hell." And it was like I kind of used the melted army men to kind of copy the Gates of Hell, Rodin's Gates of Hell, and then put Michael Jackson's face in the middle of it, and it was all on fire. Spray painted some tissue paper to make it look all extra fiery. And I think I went and got some spray painted raffia from Michael's and put it in there.
I mean, did you get a good grade on it?
Yeah.
like when you hear that people, when you hear someone deny it, I mean, is that something you're like, really?
I know people choose to believe whatever they believe in right now, and I think that was one of the reasons why people were so adamant about the flat Earth thing, is because it became once the flat Earth argument became a question of faith versus anything, like, somebody can actually come up and say, like, well, I've never seen the Earth round, but I can see that it's flat, so I'm going to trust my perception and my beliefs, and I'm just going to say, and I'm going to have faith that what I think is, like, you're no different than a Christian. And,
pretty much.
And I kind of understand that argument, but now that kind of slippery slope has been stepped on, now people like can literally be like, I choose my own reality based upon the facts I choose to ignore and choose to not ignore.
Yeah, post-truth pretty much explains that very well.
Jesus, like, like it's like post-punk, post-truth, like,
because who says your sources are correct?
I'm totally into new wave truth, bro.
Yeah. I think what's super funny about the flat Earth thing is the math is actually the same for describing the global shape.
Well, it's all
shape.
People
the
don't.
Math is exactly the same for the distance in ratio. That is, like, the numbers come out in the same in.
Well, it comes out in pi.
It comes out in ratios that are very similar and comparable. So it really makes, when they try to make it their arguments, like, sure, your argument works in the second dimension, but in the third dimension, where reality sits.
Well, I don't even think it's so much that. I mean, you could say the same things about people who make religious arguments, and that's essentially what it is it's a religious argument, and I personally don't believe that I'm to tell anybody who's right or wrong about what they believe as far as faith is concerned. I can think to myself, like, wow, they think believe some goofy shit, but I'm not necessarily going to be like, well, like, if it keeps them happy, like, but at what point do you go from, like, okay, now you believe in flat Earth, now you believe that, your phone's spying on you, now you believe that, like, it's okay to lock children in cages. Like, at what point do you go to, like, where you say, like, wait a minute?
Yeah.
Like,
and I think that's been, like, a huge problem today, too, because I honestly, if you want to believe what you want to believe, that's fine. I mean, but everyone has a right to criticize you. That doesn't mean that you can't believe what you want to believe or necessarily. It's, people trying to escape from criticism is one thing, but also trying to force their morals on other people is just unethical. People can believe what they want, but, just because one's right, the other, people still have that liberty to believe they want, and forcing it onto others is just pretty much unethical. even if you are right, it's kind of a problem, because now the only way to make them believe you is either by force or if they learn.
And that's been a lot of the problem with the way things are right now is, a lot of people make the comparison to where, like, bullies and stuff, where, like, like, the reasonable people aren't the people that are forcing their opinions down people's throat, and they aren't. And now that we now that those people have started doing that, they start getting criticized and, well, you're triggered, or saying you're stupid, or you're a snowflake or whatever. But it's like, that's how bullies are. Is they try to, you start
Yeah.
to stand up for yourself. They try to push back harder.
And there's bullies and snowflakes all over the spectrum.
Oh, right,
I
right.
mean, that's how it works.
Right. But I don't know. I've just noticed that, like, people feel more empowered again by having a voice and knowing what they believe and knowing what's right, what's wrong, and I guess it's because there's so many people that have been in therapy this generation or the past couple, and it's just one of those things where as soon as those people start getting a means of expressing themselves, people try to shut them down.
Yeah, and it, like, within the last few years, I mean, it's even gone to the music scene as well. But I mean, obviously, you'll see it in politics. I mean, you'll always see it in politics where people will get shut down for some sort of speech. I mean, yeah, a lot of some of the people that do come on and get shut down, sometimes they have some really outrageous opinions that, yeah, I really don't agree with that. Some people are kind of more mainstream and it's not understandable. But then when it bleeds into art and music and all that stuff, that's where that's where some lines need to be drawn, especially because now this guy could be making satirical comments about it to educate people. Like, look, this is stupid.
Oh, right.
And especially if it really is stupid. And with YouTube and Twitch and all now, they're always on there trying to find someone, whatever, in Instagram and Twitter, and it's all over the internet. It happens all the time where people get shut down even if they're disagreeing with the topic. Even if they talk about a topic, or even if they mention the topic, they get demonetized, deplatformed, censored.
Right. And I don't know. I spent the first year of speaking on stage with a microphone in my hand in front of people, figuring out where those lines are.
Yeah, and they do apply to the internet too, for sure.
And well, that and just knowing how to say things, but not saying it in the way, like, I mean, like, I didn't call you a retard. I asked if you're retarded. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
like as long
it's
as
a derogatory question.
right, as long as you keep that stuff in that ballpark of the second example, like, you can pretty much say what you need to say.
Yeah, that's some great words. I think you've been giving some good advice all episode.
I would hope so. I mean,
like, I want someone to go out there to do exactly what he said, word for word. Prove us right.
oh, dude, I got in trouble one time. It's Sears, because a coworker had wrecked her car, and we videotaped it. And when she came into the sales floor on Monday, we put it to where it played on all the TVs in our department. Like, it played, and she, like, started crying. And I remember sitting in the meeting with the general manager, the HR person, and her, and he goes, like, what possessed you to do this?
What possessed you?
Yeah, like, why did you think that this would be a good idea? And I remember saying, like, well, I thought she would have a sense of humor about it, and she would understand that it was fucking hilarious. And she kind of made a big deal about it again, and then yeah, I got in trouble. But I just remember thinking to myself, like, if you like are able to remove yourself from this situation, it's really funny. Like, if it happened to anybody else at work, she would have no problem with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah, a lot of people have this rules for thee but not for me kind of thing, and you gotta have your same standards all around, otherwise you seem like a hypocrite.
Well,
no?
the idea of you got to take it as well as to dish it out,
Yeah.
and especially in stand up. I mean, the stuff that people are gonna say to you about you behind your back, for the most part, are probably gonna be, way less brutal than the shit they say to your face. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and you gotta just learn how to take that shit.
Sometimes. And yeah, I think that's the problem with a lot of people too, is that they can't handle it.
Well,
like you got to be able to take the punches. That's kind of the whole thing of fame,
well, the thing is too is like if you're an MMA fighter and you want to practice getting punched in the face, you go someplace to get punched in the face, and I think the problem now is getting punched in the face is no longer an emphasized survival skill. So people just aren't used to getting punched in the face. So when they do get punched in the face, like their eyes get all watery and their ears start ringing. They don't know what to do.
I'm sure you've heard about the people who advocate for shutting down wrestling and all these other types of martial arts because they seem too, quote unquote, barbaric or prehistoric or ancient. Just they try to get these words to make it seem like it's old styled, but really it's to each their own.
Well, I think it's gotten to the point now, at least in the idea of like, I mean, honestly, I think football's the worst one of them all as far as just brain damage on players, lifespan of players, the amount of money that they make over the sacrifices that they make with their body and stuff. Right. I think the football players are probably some of the most exploited when it comes to that barbaric blood sport thing. But I think when it comes to like wrestlers and MMA fighters and stuff, like I know some people who have been doing that a very long time, and some of them are not so good in the head. Some of them have emotional problems. Some of them will get angry on a dime. Other ones will just lay in the couch and, they used to be like a trim 190 fighting pounds and now they're 235 and
gain weight.
Yeah, right. Just look awful and like, it's just, there's just a lot of stuff that just like comes with it that like for a small period versus the long run, it's, makes you reassess that stuff and think like, like when I was going to wrestling school, like, I was getting dropped on my head and shoulders and neck like all day. Yeah. All day.
Yeah. And
every Wednesday and one Saturday a month, and then I stopped paying the dude and he told me to fuck off. I was like, hey, if I don't pay anymore, do you think I could still like do the shows on the weekends? And he's like, no, you can fuck off. So
all right.
I didn't think it was worth it to, do that shit and put up with this 15 fucking people that, like.
I mean, that's the thing about it, too. It's like, you could choose to do it, you could choose not to do it. That's kind of what's great about it.
Right, but I mean, I was well aware of what, like, I could feel it in my body, like, every time I hit my head, like, what it was doing to me.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it's painful. Same thing, like, especially football,
I got in a car wreck a few years ago, and my arm was broken. My bone was sticking out of my arm and shit.
Ouch.
And the ambulance people were like, do you have a concussion? I was like, not at all. And they're like, oh, I was like, dude, I don't hear any ringing. I don't taste any metal. I don't feel any burning in my neck. I don't feel dizzy. I don't have any loss of memory. I don't my tongue feels not dry. Like, like I like listed off all, and he's like, okay, cool. You don't have a concussion.
Yeah.
Like, but the reason why I know that is because I've had enough to where I know what the I guess the score is. So.
There you go. You learned something from it.
Right. But yeah, a lot of the people I know though that have spent that, like, it would have been nice if they would have known that going into it, because I don't think they necessarily had that option. But I think the people going into it now totally have that option to know.
Of course.
Like, if I can use a phrase like that they try to say about the cops and militaries, they know what they're signing up for.
Definitely. Yeah,
a
lot of these people, when they go into it, I mean, I think people forget it's like this is what they want to do. I mean,
dude,
this is
they
you don't think they know what they're getting themselves into.
There are guys that are wrestling on TV and stuff right now that are like, like the slightest miscue in the ring and they're paralyzed for life. They're like wrestling on like fused neck bones and shit, and they're still like whatever. And they know full on what's going to happen. Like, even the wrestling fans on the internet know what's going to happen. And part of it, I think, that they watch is they're waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And, they're still content to do it because they're, making $500,000 a year.
Yeah. And, that's what makes them happy. That's what makes them happy.
I'm making retirement money and I'm 30,
Yeah, exactly. And they want to live with barely being able to walk, that's fine. They chose to do it. They made money off it.
You know what?
Good,
That's
lot of
better
money.
than working in the docks and barely being able to walk when you're 60, anyways, and
Very
not
true.
and not having
Any money.
20 years of $500,000 a year
Yeah.
behind
No
you.
kidding.
So,
No kidding.
I mean, guess it's all perspective.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
It's like New Jack said, I like my shit quick.
yeah. So, and really, it's up to the individual, and their perspective. I mean, you can't force one person's
Well,
perspective.
I truly
another
believe
person
that there are
necessarily.
some people that are just not cut out to be 9 to 5 people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Oh yeah.
that's like, there's an old story about the Glenn Miller band, like an old like swing band from the 30s, and I guess they're gonna go do like a Christmas Eve show or Christmas Day show or Christmas night show or something, but their train broke down like a mile outside of town. So instead of like waiting for a car to come and pick them up because they're already running late, they decided to just walk through the snow with their instruments and go to the gig, which was like a mile away. So they're walking through the snow and they walk through this field and they get into town, and like the first place they pass is like this house, and it's like, Norman Rockwell's a walk, like picket fence, big bay window, Christmas tree, gifts, dog, kid. And they're like all hugging in the window, like just being like the American family or whatever. And Glenn Miller walked up, and the couple of his band members were looking at this scene through the window, and he comes up and goes like, Jesus Christ, how do people live like that? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's all perspective.
Yeah, and it's actually really funny you say that, because in entertainment especially, I mean, how a lot of people, they look at people who work at Winco, for example, in the warehouse and think, how can someone do that? I couldn't do that. It's a lot of it's not because they couldn't do it physically, but essentially just because they didn't feel like wanting to do it, because they knew they found their calling already doing something else. But
there's that
I could
idea
never do
too,
that.
and I think there's also another litigating factor in that, which is they don't have to do that.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have to. Yeah.
Because those people that you see that are just miserable working at the warehouse at Winco, for example, just loading boxes, and no, they're going to go smoke a cigarette at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. No, they're going to go smoke a cigarette at noon. No, that they're going to drink a cup of coffee at 6 o'clock in the morning, take a shit at 6:30, get in their car at 7, punch in the clock at work at 8, throw a ham and cheese sandwich in a fucking lunchbox and get yelled all day long by their boss, and fucking get home, fucking pound a couple tall cans, fucking tune into the 10 o'clock news, take a shit and go to bed. Like, they have that all planned out every day of their life. Like, there's some people that like that and need that and have kids and have to have that security and have to be able to plan that shit out, because they need to know what resources they're gonna have in 2 weeks. Whereas there's some people that don't have kids, some people that don't necessarily need to live fancy, some people are content to rent a room from a stranger in a house instead of have their own space, and some people are even content to just sleep in a van or whatever. I think that those are the people that kind of stuff, they figure out pretty quick what they can and can't live with.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
whereas I think that the people that, the 9 to 5 people, I don't necessarily begrudge them, because I don't think they know that they can live without some of that stuff.
Yeah, I can definitely, I can definitely agree with what you're saying, because a lot of the times people don't know where to draw the line between what they need and what they want. And,
Well,
I try to keep things to what I need, essentially.
Well, I have a friend that literally does nothing but work at Frito-Lay, putting chips in boxes. 10 hours a day plus 2 extra hours of overtime from 3 a.m. until 3 p.m. Come home and go to sleep, wake up, go have 3 or 4 drinks from 11 until midnight, or midnight until 1, go home, get ready for work, and then go to work. And it's like vampire type stuff. And I try to tell this person all the time, that's kind of mentally unhealthy, and maybe if you didn't put so much emphasis on that being your be all end all so that you can make a car payment.
Right, right.
Like,
A lot of it does come down to just straight up planning and
well,
people
not
wanting
only that, but
stuff
it's
all the
just
time.
like, dude, like, fucking enjoy your fucking life, dude. Like, it doesn't have to be all about this shit that just, it's just shit.
Don't let your life be wasted by just working. And there's nothing
Like,
wrong
you're
with
literally
working,
like
but
an
don't waste your life
automation.
doing that.
You're literally an automation that is like literally like, in the eyes of Frito Lay, like one fucking like,
You're a statistic.
I wouldn't even say a statistic, dude. Like, you're basically a machine that they don't have to fucking do maintenance on when you break down. They
Right.
just replace you, and I just feel, I see this person's miserable and dead inside and fucking wants to die and fucking complains every fucking time you talk to them. And, I know people work at Amazon that are like that too. And it's just like, fucking relax, dude. Like,
Yeah.
Like,
And a lot of the times these people, they push themselves
buy
because
your
they
kids
want
some
that big
buy your
shit.
kids some cheap shoes. Tell them to shut the fuck up and fucking relax.
Yeah,
Like,
no kidding. Yeah, stop trying to buy your kid a goddamn brand new car and just give them a scooter.
yeah, that's a good analogy too. But yeah, it's just, you're teaching your kid to be like materialistic too, and
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just,
I think the biggest part of being independent is being able to start from nothing, but not necessarily like nothing to the point of nothing. But you get what I'm saying. Like you don't have like when you start out, you didn't start out with a car, for example. You
right.
gain that along the way. You learn to take care of yourself really well, and a lot of people, it comes on naturally right away. But some people, it does take a lot of learning for them to.
Well, a lot of people don't
learn
have
responsibility, I
examples
guess you could say.
either, and I think that's one of our problems. Is as a culture is that there are a lot of people that don't have good examples that are starting to come to that age to where they're starting to be the foundation of things, and they don't know how to do that because literally nobody ever showed them how.
Yeah.
Like, like either by absentee parents, by teachers that didn't give a shit and were just there for the tenure, coaches and babysitters that were just like, yeah, just fucking watch the TV and shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that stuff has an effect when they get older, and people don't realize that until they're there.
And I guess I would be very thankful for my grandparents and whatnot for forcing me to read Harry Potter books, for example. Because I wasn't really into reading as a kid, but as you get older, you start realizing that I'm interested in something, I want to find out more information about it. And since you know how to find the resources because you've read books before, it becomes easier. And same thing with typing essays on a computer. I mean, I'm glad. Like, you gotta be glad those people made you type those motherfuckers, because now you know how to research. You gotta find your own information.
Like, I know how to use the Dewey Decimal System. I don't know. There's a lot of people that still know how to use the card catalog at the library, for example.
Right. But it's just skills that are pretty essential still today, even though a lot of paper stuff is obsolete. I mean, there could be a day where you don't have Wi-Fi or data or any of that stuff, and you gotta go find stuff manually.
Well, a lot of people don't understand that, like, benefits to education, quote unquote, or college or whatever. Like, a lot of it isn't necessarily getting the answers handed to you. It's knowing how to find the information, knowing how to interpret the information, and knowing how to use that to draw your own conclusions and to use what they call methodology to prove or show why you came to that conclusion.
Right.
And I think that there's a real lacking of methodology in our culture right now.
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of people,
well, people go from A to C, but they don't tell you how they got there.
Yeah, they'll they get the A to C, but their B is their feelings, and that's it. And
I think
saying,
it's okay for people to have feelings, and I think it's okay for people to express them. I think once people start expressing their feelings and ignoring information, I think that's when it becomes.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. I mean, it's okay to feel something like, oh, I don't feel the way that is, but when you learn more about it and you're more informed, then I can take you seriously. Because otherwise, if you haven't looked at the information, then really all you're running off of is just what you've seen and not really what you know. If that makes any sense.
I understand that. I think like an example I was gonna use is like if I told you like they're putting kids in cages, like I think it's okay for you to be like, what? That's crazy. But I also think it's okay for you to be like, what? Prove it. you know?
Exactly.
And
yeah, you can't chastise someone for criticizing or questioning you, because that's what science is all about, is questioning something. You question everything.
well, it's not even so much science so much as like the idea like we were talking about before, like you can either just be like dirt to dirt. It's what I see and it's what I choose to believe, so I'm gonna have faith that I'm right. Or you can try to make an informed opinion, I guess.
And exactly, because what I've seen and whatnot is and in regards to both sides of anything really, they'll always try to find the anecdotal information to prove that they were right. But it's funny because they always fall and grab from the same group of people. With the Cage Kid example, they grab the Holocaust victims who survived, and they both have examples saying that people agree with them, and then
there are other Holocaust survivors that are like, well, they're not putting us in gas chambers, so it's not the same yet. But yet, at the same time, they are saying yet.
The funny, another funny thing is, which is actually a very valid point, is that people say, well, not a lot of them, like for example, Anne Frank, she didn't die of
she died of like
typhus, and
like
a lot
dysentery,
of people forget about that.
Yeah.
But another thing I think people forget is that we live in such an age where it's really hard to keep the truth away from things. It really is. I mean, you can actually find these places for yourself when no one knows, and spy on it for 24 hours and see how it operates. They don't know you're there. That we still live in a culture where it's like where you can do that.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too, is they're, they have satellites set up to where they can know, like, oh, North Korea is not denuclearizing this power plant like they said that they're going to, but yet you can tell me that those same satellites can't zoom in on like 10,000 kids in a fucking schoolyard cage.
Yeah.
Like, what I mean?
What's really, really funny is that a lot of these places were actually FEMA camps built a long time ago.
Right.
Or military bases or internment camps, and they've been used since the Reagan era.
Well, they're either, like, or prisons that never got finished.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing, too. There's,
Or prisons that got finished but never had inmates put in them because the real money was just building the prison.
And it's also interesting to note that like this cartel selling children to rent them out to couples who want to try to get in. There's even more traffic. There's families who found in the wilderness in South Texas and New Mexico trying to find shelter because they died. I mean, it's awful.
Right.
It's ridiculous, and I think there's a lot of things that people don't put into factors. And a lot of these people, when they get arrested, I mean, they already are sick. I mean, shit. How long do they walk? 3,000 miles or something like that?
Right.
There's no way they would be in perfect health.
We're doing it
There's
without shoes and stuff. Yeah.
There's absolutely no way. That's not the reality of the situation.
Well, the point is too is that they're supposed to be able to come here through, basically the decisions made from the Nuremberg trials. That they should be able to come here and be like, hi, we're coming here for sanctuary, and we're supposed to be like, sure, come on in. And I don't understand why that. I mean, I understand why, but I don't see why nobody is saying like, hey, there's laws, motherfucker, we need to follow them. And if that means, and I know that this is going to sound very contrarian to a lot of other people's notions, but I'm forced to wonder how long that this is going to continue before the United Nations decides to, get four or five other nations' militaries involved and fucking
and
show up and be like, hey, motherfucker, we said let these people out of these fucking camps.
Right. And the problem is when you have people on the I mean like the far left, they'll say stuff like never again, but they'll say, oh, we're talking about the Holocaust. Never again specifically is in correlation to the Holocaust. It is specifically about that.
Well,
and I can understand where they're coming from, that we shouldn't be I personally agree, we shouldn't be doing that. But if we're going to have people who need to be taken care of, as if like these homeless facilities, for example, which are privatized, by the way, why aren't they treated the same way? Why are they run by government officials who we are known to be unethical in their practice? Why are we allowing this to happen? Why are we allowing for a Congress to tell us how we could spend money, not spend the money where it's supposed to go, and then treat people like shit?
Well, I think the precedent is set for years before. I mean, like, we elected the former head of the CIA that probably was a trigger man that pulled the trigger and killed Malcolm X as president. Yeah. I mean, there's a very good chance that George Bush Sr. was literally the dude that did it. And, there's a good chance he might have, had something to do with JFK getting shot. And, because he's the head of the CIA and all.
Right.
And, we had no problem electing him. And we had no...
Yeah, exactly.
And we had no problem electing, I don't know what the word for George Bush Jr. would be, except that,
Just George W. Bush, huh?
we had no problem in electing somebody that talked plain and was very regular and
mission accomplished.
I guess, again, sorry with the wrestling analogies, man, but like the very Dusty Rhodes everyman kind of president where, all of a sudden it became like, well, shit, Bubba Ray, maybe you could be president. Like, like that whole idea of, just it became something that, it didn't become a respectable office. Like kind of like how the Ramones made it possible for the rock star to be like a dude standing in a pile of shit at the end of the bar waiting for somebody to talk to him, as opposed to Mick Jagger backstage in a limo with, you may come in and blow me now.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's actually hilarious because the last 30 years we've been electing presidents, so you just go, really? Like this guy really? And
dude,
from Clinton to Trump, I agree with every one of these presidents. Seem like, why did we get this guy in the office? He doesn't seem to actually want to give any real policy other than just boost his own ego and his own personal set of beliefs.
There are differences between the parties, though, and there are differences between people's terms. And I think one of the biggest things is like I know, like, being alive and being a working person in the late 90s when Bill Clinton was president, like, it just seemed like everybody had a lot more breathing space, a lot more relaxation, a lot more like the cash grab by the 1% wasn't complete yet at the point to where, like, there are people who still had money to go do things and relax and not have to be like, oh my God, if I lose this paycheck this month, I am fucked, like.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes from, Reagan's failure to explain the economics.
A lot of it came too from just the idea of that's what they choose to emphasize, is making that a possibility, is whereas the Republicans come into power and they decide to do the exact opposite and have the balls to throw like words like trickle down at you and stuff.
And that's not Austrian economic of you. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, it's like it's cash grab politics, and people don't.
It's corporatist.
Right, and people don't understand that, like, people understand that it's literally like like from Arrested Development, George Bluth using the Bluth Company's bank account as his own personal bank account. Like, they don't understand that these congressmen and these senators and, presidents and secretaries of states and shit, they don't understand that these people are doing the same thing.
Yeah, and it all comes down to this. I mean, they have the monopoly on the power. They have the monopoly of who to tell who can succeed, who can't, even though they claim that it's a free market. It's not a free market. The government purposely created too big to fail businesses. Big Pharma, for example.
Oh, right.
I mean, that was all done because FDA regulations over time prevented from people from being able to create better medications. Those companies
went through and bought the legislation to ensure that it would happen.
Yeah.
The government didn't necessarily strike out with the plan to have that happen. That struck out as a side hustle, if you will.
Right, and really it just gave them more control and power over the people because they knew that, oh, well, these guys are offering us money. Well, shit. We're all getting good pensions anyway.
Well, I mean, it's been an oligarchy ever since, white landowning males are the only ones that could vote. But at the same time, like, it seems like that shit gets deeper and deeper and thicker. And, like, when Jello Biafra said that shit, it sounded paranoid. In the 80s. But now when he says that shit, you're just like, yeah, Jello, we all know. It's cool.
I mean, what I think... and what I've understood about American history, and whatnot, how we changed over time in society from being, extremely just a white people only, landowners only kind of stuff to the diversity that we have now. I mean, I believe that it's important to note the way that people write things, especially.
I think we were always diverse here, dude. Because
we were always
from
pretty diverse.
day one, we had African slaves, we had Irish indentured servants, we had Native Americans, we had the Pilgrims and the Quakers. Which are two very different kinds of white people. And and then we also had the Spaniards and the Italians trying to come here and also get their chunk of land. Plus, we also had people coming from Portugal.
Yep.
Like,
the OGs.
I mean, those were people that like literally had their own little chunks of Europe and didn't intermingle at all. That are all suddenly like in this big white open wilderness.
Yeah, it's funny. The Portuguese actually didn't go in and slaughter people.
Right.
Unless it's in their homeland.
Well, they just told the Pope to get involved, and the Pope went in there and said, like, we're gonna trunk line here and everything on this side, like, you know what I mean?
Right. I think that was just the weirdest part of history too.
Like, they literally went like this to South America.
Exactly.
Which,
drew some really dark lines.
Like when you and your buddy split like an eighth, and then like he breaks it up, and then you pick which half you want. Like, it's like that. It's like that kind of deal.
But like I think people are kind of forgetting how the political atmosphere was at the time as well. I mean, because there's no parties, and when parties were starting to be created.
Oh, dude, there were so many parties. That's where a lot of people were on. There were Whigs. There's actually a Quaker Party. There's progressives back then, even, or people that call themselves progressives.
There's no like
back
big
then.
Parties. Of course, like there wasn't no like monopoly of parties. Is what I'm saying.
Well,
like,
it wasn't a two
because it wasn't necessarily like centralized.
Well. A lot of that first couple hundred years of American politics too it was so regionally based, like like you still had dudes like even as late as the 1850s and shit where they're like like I'm a Southern Democrat, I'm not even a regular Democrat.
Yeah,
and where they still had agendas that were based on region and stuff.
Yeah,
and I don't think it became a big national thing until like. Probably after Reconstruction happened, when the only way that we're going to put the country back together is to kind of put everything all in one pot and think of them not as our former enemies but as our brother who's come back home.
Yeah.
And once we started doing that, we started to kind of build a national identity. And then once the old Southern Democrats infiltrated the Northern Republican Party, because they had to swear an allegiance to the Union, and then they kind of just changed the party as they took over because the Northern Republicans were all old and started dying, and the Southern Democrats were young and kept going, and they just literally changed the party.
Yeah.
And then
forget as well. It's like it wasn't even economic at that time. It wasn't even.
It was cultural and regional.
Yeah, it was mostly regional, right? Exactly. Like there was nothing. The parties didn't have any much unifying because you had a progressive wing and you had a conservative wing of each party.
Yeah.
And it was all over the place. You had people who were more modern socialist on the Republican Party and Democrat Party, and also, what would you say, market liberal, or at that time, I think you would describe it.
That stuff didn't start coming out till the Industrial Revolution, which pretty much was right after the Civil War, or at least our Civil War. But the thing with the Industrial Revolution that kind of made it weird was it wasn't just happening here. It was kind of a global thing.
Yeah.
And I know that when we think about it in American history, we don't think about it in a global thing.
Yeah, we only think about the West.
Right, but I mean, in China and stuff, they were already way ahead of us when it came to having automation, having factories, having I'm not really sure what the term is, but basically, like, here's a factory, here's the town around the factory, everybody in this town works at this factory. Like, China was full of that shit before we even decided to start, switching from coal,
Right.
And, they had rail systems, which is why the Chinese built the railroads here, because they already been using them for 100 fucking years.
Yeah, they had great engineers too.
Right.
And even though they were used and exploited to shit,
right.
They had a lot of very great mathematics. They had a lot of good engineering and whatnot. It was interesting to bring that over. I mean, there's a lot of, I think a lot of people kind of forget when they learn about American history, especially. I mean, there's still the rest of the world going on. Where do you think a lot of this shit came from?
Right.
I mean, a lot of the European foods are where you think those seeds came from, especially when they came out with more plants and more things to grow.
Right. Well, and that was part of too is Europe had everything that was so limited that that's why they expanded. That's why England was in India and Hong Kong. That's why they were in Australia. That's why the U.S. was in the Philippines is because they ran out of shit to take over and they still felt like they needed more shit. And I mean that's why we have Puerto Rico is I guess I don't know if it's even going to be a state anytime soon, but a territory that we, enforce our will upon. I don't even really know what
do you think they'll become a state, or do you think it'll be released?
Alaska eventually became a state. I mean, Hawaii eventually became a state, even though that was basically we used our military to go there and
it was the Dole Company.
Yeah, kill people so that we could have canned pineapple, and then came back and then was like, well, they've been good to us. We might as well make them a state. And there you go.
That's exactly.
It's kind of
think it's funny.
And then Alaska, they made a state because they were afraid that the treaty that they had signed before would expire before they annexed it, and then Russia would get it, and they couldn't let Russia have any North American territory.
Right.
So, and Canada was just like, fuck it, we don't really want it.
I think it's like super funny with a lot of these really random borders that we have on our continent. Like, do you know the islands St. Pierre and Miquelon on the east coast?
Is that in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, not really over there. It's like in that region. It's more like under Labrador.
Oh, okay.
And it's owned by France, but it's not even a mile away from the coast of Canada.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, like, how come you guys just say,
the only reason why that is still owned by France is because there is a Templar temple on it, and Templar shit is French shit, and they decided that wherever that stuff is their stuff.
So what about Quebec then? Did Quebec have Templars?
I'm sure Quebec did. That's why they still speak French there.
Right, but it's not part of France, is what I'm saying. I mean,
maybe that was the agreement with England. Maybe the Queen was like, "You can keep this little island here," And
I don't know. If I was Justin Trudeau, I'd be like, France, it's been long overdue. You better give me that.
If I was Justin Trudeau, I would be more concerned about
winning the next election.
Well, I was gonna say just keeping Canadian Parliament under my control because he's
losing it,
dude.
And I mean, he's been down to popular. Some people would call him the northern left-wing Trump.
Well, I was gonna
would say that.
I would say that he's more of like Mitt Romney scared the shit out of me because I thought that he would run the country like a. Oh.
Let's push it up a little bit.
I thought that he would run the country like a business, and like not like a good business. Like you know what I mean? Like
a business with too much risk.
No, like they say that if you were to analyze how a business treats people, that they would give them a psychological test and apply like their actions, how a person would to another person, that they would be a sociopath, like literally. Like, everything's about the bottom line, about their benefit, and, so on and so forth. And I was afraid that we would have somebody treating the people like a sociopath as far as business, just because that's how he ran. What was it? I don't remember what company he ran right now off the top of my head. But
would you agree?
Was it Target? I think he was waiting to laying people off and, keeping minimum wage and going to these states and lobbying to keep minimum wage like $4 an hour and all this kind of stuff. And I just thought that he would do that kind of stuff. And
would you agree that the government does that already?
Well, Trudeau is the epitome of that in Canada.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that. Because the government basically does that already. I mean, if they have a monopoly in a market, they give like the least quality stuff.
They still at least throw us the courtesy of a propositional election every now and again where we get to pick that stuff. And
that is supposed to get lobbied to death.
Right, and that's why you got to read, what all that stuff's about. Because I know that there's some people that are out there that are like, this says no, so I'm gonna vote no on it, even though you probably should have voted yes on it, because, the way they word it.
So let's change some topics a little bit. We're getting a little bit too deep into political sphere. Let's get back to comedy.
All right.
What did we say was like one of your best shows compared to one of your worst shows?
Oh, geez, one of my worst shows ever. I'm not gonna name any names, but when I had first started doing stand up, I went and did a show in Madera at this place called the Burrito King. And I had joked with the guy that put me on the show. I was like, "We're not doing a show at a taco truck, are we?" And he was like, "No, totally not." And we got to a place, and it was a restaurant that had a taco truck in front of it, but they also had a room in the back. And it was me, two other comics on the show, and the host, and the host's girlfriend were the only people in the audience.
Nice.
And
Did you get paid?
no, and my
Oh.
car broke down on the way home, and I had to get it towed. And yeah, it was just the worst show ever.
So what about your
Like
best
it
show?
was, well, it was one of those shows that didn't even happen because like there's, you know, sometimes promoters like it's just us, fuck it, and then there are other promoters like it's just us, fucking fuck it, you know,
Right.
and let's do this shit. And then there are other people who are just like fuck, I'm gonna go home and watch TV instead, and that's what we had all decided to do, or that's what he decided to do. So yeah, that was probably the worst. But that was probably about 6 months into doing stand up, maybe. Like, and it was as deflating as it was for me. I'm sure the headliner guy was even way more deflated because there's that idea of the audience reflecting you as a performer, and there's literally nobody. But I guess there's drama with a promoter and another local promoter, and then that actually coalesced into an awesome incident another time, which was fantastic. So basically, this guy from down here had decided to do a show in Madera, which was a little too close to Fresno, so it started like a little turf war with a Fresno promoter. So the Fresno promoter literally went through and said like, "Hey, if you go to this guy's show, like you can't come to my shows no more." And
What?
yeah,
Wow.
so nobody went to this
Petty.
show anymore. So nobody went to this show. So that's the first part of it. And then I guess he was going around town taking flyers down and shit too. And so once the promoter here found out what the Fresno promoter is doing, he decided that he was gonna say what's up to him next time he saw him, which happened to be in an open mic here in town. And he kind of like chased him down, I guess, in the parking lot while the dude was getting into his car. And pretty much he was like yelling at the dude, and he kind of lifted his shirt up, and the dude in the car got super scared on his way back to Fresno, and like did the thing where he like was like halfway hanging out of his car and like drove like this. He was like, trying to get away like while he's still like halfway out of his car. It was pretty funny.
Pretty awesome.
So that was probably the worst show. And then I've done a lot of really good shows. And probably the most quote unquote famous show I've ever done is I had the chance to open up for Russell Brand down at the Comedy Store.
Wow.
It was, sell tickets. Any Joe off the street can sell tickets to do this show, but I did it. And I had a chance to talk to him and get some tips from him and stuff, so it worked out. But basically, I did this show. The place was packed. And, I got to rub shoulders with celebrities and stuff. But then I've also done shows for, like, Narcotics Anonymous groups, which have had 1,800 people in it. And, just blew the roof off of the place. And I've also done shows at HempCon where, like, like Cheech and Chong smoking weed where you're at, and I'm doing a set.
That's dope.
So, I mean, it's kind of hard to judge all that stuff. It's kind of like asking which kid's your favorite, but I have good memories from certain things that I like, and since I don't drink no more, I remember them all.
Would you ever go back to doing music?
My friend has been bugging me to play in a band, and I don't know if I necessarily, like, I enjoy the it's all on me aspect of comedy. Like, I've played music so many times and been in bands where you put your heart and soul into a project just to have it blow up in your face because, like, the drummer tried to fuck the bass player's girlfriend, or
Right.
fucking, singer fucking can't stop fucking slamming heroin into their fucking neck, and rhythm guitar player's a tweaker and stole a bunch of chords. Now we don't have chords. And he's like, "Where'd the chords go? I'll help you guys find them." But that kind of stuff.
Right.
I'd rather just not even have to deal with that shit again.
So what about solo projects? Would you do any solo projects?
I used to have a one-man band that I did, but I don't know. Playing with sequencers and that kind of stuff just seems so pretentious and trite that I don't know if I have that in me. I mean, not that like, hello everybody, these are my ideas that I've worked very long and hard to articulate into as minimal words as possible to get a maximum reaction from you guys. Hello. I mean, that's pretty pretentious too, but I think it's even more pretentious to be like, here's my industrial thrash rock that you're all gonna like. You know.
You like what about comedy music? I mean, just
fuck that.
No, you say fuck that entirely.
I will look anybody that's playing a guitar in the eye and doing stand up and call them a fucking hack. like fuck that shit.
Wow.
Fuck that shit.
That's really funny.
It's Britney Spears, but I'm using different words. Now it makes it sound like I'm fucking somebody.
I mean, there's original comedy music too.
Dude, fuck Mike Vergambilia and all that shit too, dude. Fuck all that fucking stupid shit. Fuck the Higgin Boys and Gruber. Fuck all that stuff, dude. Fuck all of it, dude. I will even go as far as to say, like, fuck Gogol Bordello and their funny songs. Like, just write a fucking joke and fucking put the work into making the joke work.
Yes. Austin, what is our time? Oh, wow.
An hour and 40?
All right, well. Is there anything you'd like to finish up with?
Come to a show. Look me up online. I'm at Jimmie Menezes. That's MENEZES. The easiest silent because it's Brazilian Portuguese. But you can look me up on all the stuffs. And by all the stuffs, I mean Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Even though Twitter's probably the worst way to try and follow me. And come to a show. I have Hecklemania at Tommy T's on Tuesday. Bring all your asshole friends to yell at these poor, sweet, innocent comics that have no idea what is about to happen to them. Like, are they going to, like, yell at me and stuff? I'm like, yeah, like, short of throwing things at you, it's going to happen there. The last one we did, some dude jumped up on stage and tried to do a rap battle with one of the comics.
Oh, my.
And that was pretty hilarious.
Well, thank you very much, Jimmie Menezes. Jesus Christ. I'm never going to get it. I'm
Aren't you Portuguese too?
Yeah. I'm never going to get it. Thank you for coming on. And
oh, no problem. Thank you for having me. I didn't realize I talked about myself for an hour and 40 minutes. Sorry.
That's actually perfect. The more content, the better. And once again, I'd like to thank everybody that's been on the show previously, and thank Melinda again for supporting GottaDo Productions, and also Moon Trent for co-hosting the open mic with us.
Do. Moon Trent.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
And that is our time. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Bye.